Good morning, everybody. It is the day before Valentine's Day, 2024, February 13th. My name is Larry Jacobs. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio, and thanks so much for being here today. And thanks to my guests, who will bring on in just a second, Dr. Brian Rosenberg, returning guest, former president of Macalester College in Minnesota and visiting professor over at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and author of a great book about higher education called whatever it is, I'm Against It. Thank you, Groucho. And it's a great book. We did an interview a few months ago about it. And just terrific how hard it is to create change in higher education. And Brian's an expert on it, but he's also an expert on something else. He works with what's called the African Leadership University. And I've learned about it, and you're going to learn about it. And he goes over to Kigali, Rwanda every so often, and I'm going to find out if he goes over to the other place where the African Leadership University has a campus, which is the island of Mauritius. And if you don't know where Mauritius is, it's the place where if you live in Madagascar, you go to get away from it all, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, I think. Okay, I looked at it on Google Earth today. So we're going to be talking about what African Leadership University is, what they're trying to do, etc., with Brian, who works with them as a consultant, as a professor. He's going to explain it all to us. It's just an interesting little piece of education that I think we all could use a little lesson in. It's just something that's very unique and very cool and very important. We'll archive over at ace-ed.org. That's ace-ed.org, the home website of our American Consortium for Equity and Education. And over there, you'll find our magazine, Equity and Access. Everything's free over there. Our online journal, Equity and Access. You'll find all the podcasts are over there, plus a ton of other information, as well as some great information on the awards program. So please check it all out. It's over at ace-ed.org. And with that, good morning, Brian. It's Larry here.
Good morning, Larry. Nice to talk with you again.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, my friend. Where are you today?
I am, again, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we were supposed to get snowmageddon, but right now I'm looking at rain.
Okay. I was just going to ask you about that. As you know, I'm 2 hours north of you. We're not getting anything. The storm is staying south, and they predicted nothing, and they were right that we're not getting anything. But you guys, the schools were closed, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they closed everything. Yeah, they closed everything, and right now the streets are just wet.
Yeah, I think it's going to get snowy a little bit later, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to close the schools. But I think you're going to get something around noontime or so. So look forward to it.
We'll see. It'll
remind you of Minnesota. Lovely place.
Yes.
Yes, it's good.
Yes.
It's good, and that's excellent. And welcome back. Okay, now, I have to tell you this. I did a little research before the show on the African Leadership University, which you are so heavily involved in, and I noticed that it is a institution that has two campuses, and we talked about the one you visit, I think, which is Kigali in Rwanda, and I hope this time you go to see the gorillas. You going to go over and see the gorillas?
One of these trips, I have to go and see the gorillas.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
I know.
But the other campus of ALU is on the island of Mauritius, which I knew at least was an island.
Okay. That's correct.
I did, but I didn't know where, and I looked it up on Google Earth today, and literally it is way east of Madagascar, and it's a small island, and this is in the, I can't even pronounce it, the Pamplemousse, I guess it's French, district, which I guess is the capital city. Do you know that? Is it? I don't even know.
Yes, I've been there.
Yeah, well, tell me about it. Before we go any further, tell me about Mauritius.
So my first trip to ALU was actually to the campus in Mauritius, which is actually the first ALU campus. That's where it was founded. The reason it was founded in Mauritius is because Mauritius is probably the country that is, even though it's an island, is considered part of Africa with the most stable and democratic government. And so it seemed like a good and safe place to establish a new university. So there's still a campus there. It's smaller than the Kigali campus. Mauritius is a paradise. I would highly recommend anyone who has an opportunity to visit Mauritius, it's got some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. It's got beautiful mountains. It really is a lovely place with lovely people.
It's paradise. And, everybody wants to get away with it all. And they think of there was just a joke yesterday in the New York Times, the Falkland Islands. And this is Africa's, what I'm telling you, it's way out there. It's way out there.
Yeah.
Okay? And, I didn't know anything about it. But it's that beautiful. It's a democracy. And it's good. Yeah, talk about it. This is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's very multicultural. It draws a lot from the east, so from the Indian subcontinent, and from the continent of Africa, and from Europe. Like most of Africa, it was colonized at one point. So some people speak English, some people speak French, some people speak what they call Creole. So it's a super interesting and diverse and thriving place.
Most people, including myself, who prides myself, I might add, on my knowledge of geography and cultures and all that, find it absolutely incredible that I really didn't even know where it was. So, wow. How do you fly there? What do you do? Where do you go?
It takes so the easiest way to get there from where I am is you fly from Boston to Paris, and then there's a direct flight from De Gaulle to Mauritius. So it takes a long time, but it's not that complicated.
That's a long way, Paris to
Mauritius. It's a very long way. That's about a 12, 13-hour flight.
Yeah, and it's also, I would imagine a lot of people go there on vacation because it sounds like it's paradise. Like you said, it's paradise. Wow.
A lot of people from France, especially since there's a lot of French speakers there. A lot of people from Europe go there on vacation.
Well, there you go. Welcome to America. I had to look on a map to figure out where it was. Okay, what can I tell you? All right, and I'm glad I did. Now I know. Okay, all right, let's learn about this. How'd you get involved with ALU, the African Leadership University? Tell us what it is and how they find Brian Rosenberg.
So ALU was founded by a man named Fred Swaniker, who is a 1999 graduate of Macalester College, and I've known Fred
there you go.
for a long time.
There you go.
I was not president when he was a student. I'm old, but not that old. But we got to know each other over the years when he was
what year did he graduated? 1999?
1999, yeah.
Yeah.
And we brought him back one year. We gave him an honorary degree. He was a commencement speaker. I had spoken to him a lot about the work he was doing at Africa on education. And so when I stepped down from my position at Macalester, he reached out and said, would you come and help us try to establish or continue to establish this university in Africa? And it seemed to me like an extraordinarily interesting opportunity. Most college presidents fantasize about what it would be like if you could create a university from scratch. And essentially that's what ALU is. ALU was founded in 2015 with the goal of trying to provide high-quality, financially accessible education on the continent that is the least well-served by higher education in the world. Only 9% of students who graduate from high school in Africa go on to post-secondary education. And that's a result of both cost and scarcity. And so ALU was designed to try to address that problem. Could we do something that at least the middle class in Africa, which is small, can afford, that can provide scholarships to students who can afford to pay nothing, that can design a model of education that costs much less than the model in the U.S., and that works. And so that's what we've been working on now, certainly for the 3+ years that I've been involved with ALU, but really going back to its founding in 2015.
Oh, you're coming up to the 10th year anniversary. That's cool.
We are, yeah. The 10th year anniversary of the Mauritius campus will be celebrated in 2025.
And you will be going, I assume? Will you be going?
That's my plan. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Wow. And again, a long flight, for goodness sakes. Okay. What's that gentleman's name again? Say it again.
Fred Swaniker.
Fritz or Fred?
He is Fred Swaniker. He is by birth from Ghana.
Okay, he's from Ghana. He wants to have an African university. I don't know if you know the answer to this. So why would he put it? It would be like, I want to have an American university. I'm going to put it in Hawaii on the west side of the smallest island. Okay. Well, why did he put it in Mauritius? And I know you described this wonderful place, but it is far away from literally the continent.
Right. I think that the plan always was to open at least one other campus on the continent itself. But of all the countries in Africa, Mauritius is one of the ones where it is easiest to set up an economically stable and safe campus. As I said, it's a democracy. Its economy is strong. And so if you want to set something up and not have to worry about things like political disruption, which, as you know, happens frequently in Africa, Mauritius seemed like a very stable place to start. So that's why it started there. But again, the goal was always to establish at least one other campus, potentially more. And so the Kigali campus was opened a couple of years later in 2017.
Well, wow. And how many kids go? Do you know?
It's up to now about 2,200 or 2,300. So when I joined 3.5 years ago, it was probably closer to 1,000. So I would say it's more than doubled in size in the time I've been working with ALU.
And what do you do? What are you doing there, Brian?
My role, I have two roles at this point. First of all, I am what is called senior advisor. The senior, I think, is a nod to my age. And I work with the leadership team and the learning design team to try to establish an effective learning model and to help a team that is, for the most part, very young develop its leadership skills. And I'm also now a member of the board. Like most nonprofit universities around the world, ALU has a board, and I am now vice chair of the board as well. So I have an oversight role, but also an advisory role.
Well, you must feel good about this. This is really a nice thing, and it's a fun thing.
Honestly, it feels like both the most interesting and potentially the most impactful thing I've done in my career. I love education. I feel like everything I've done as a teacher and as an administrator has had a social impact, but if we could really get this off the ground, I think it has the potential not just to affect education in Africa, but to affect higher education around the world.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Because there's no place in the world that isn't facing at least some of the same problems with higher education, beginning with the fact that it's too expensive. And because it's so expensive, it is inaccessible to large portions of the population around the world and in the United States. And so we simply need to find a way to bend the cost curve of higher education while maintaining a higher level of quality than most online programs have had to this point. And so the model that ALU is trying to develop, if it works, is one that has the potential to offer education that's both high quality and less expensive, which also could reach a lot of underserved populations in the United States.
That would be wonderful. What's the model? How are they doing? Because they have a physical campus, and there are students on campus. Okay.
Right.
Do they have
describe it as a hybrid model?
What's the model?
You could describe it as hybrid. You could describe it as blended. I would describe ALU as an experiential university. So the way the model works is all students spend the first term on one of the campuses. All students take exactly the same curriculum during that first term. It's what's called the leadership core. And it's designed to instill in students both the hard skills and the soft skills necessary to be an effective learner. So they do some of the things you'd expect, courses in writing for impact, speaking for impact, courses on quantitative reasoning, but they also take courses on soft skills, things like resilience, creativity, teamwork, all the things that you need not just to be a successful student, but to be successful when you leave the university and the workplace. And then once they complete that in-person first term, and they really become sort of acculturated to ALU, then their learning is blended. Some of their courses are online. Some of their courses are in person, delivered by visiting faculty. A lot of their work is what we call experiential, so learning by doing. There's a lot of evidence, and we know it from our lives, that people learn more by doing things than by sitting in a classroom and listening. So a lot of the education at ALU involves things like internships and actually going out into the field. So if you're studying agriculture, you might spend time working on a farm. And the advantage of this is not only do you learn a lot.
Would it be a farm in Mauritius? Or would it be a farm in Kigali? Or would it be a farm in your home country? I'm going to say Ghana, whatever the case may be.
It could be any of those things. So it could be it could be working on a farm in Rwanda. But if you are from Ghana or you're from Uganda, it could be working on a farm that's near where you live. It doesn't. You're not limited to any one particular location. And the advantage of this is not only do students learn a lot, but it's a lot less expensive. Most of the people who take on these interns are looking for the kind of really smart, really inexpensive work that they can do. And so it's a mix. Every student is required it's a 3-year bachelor's degree. They don't have the long breaks the way we have in the U.S. So it's
it's already spring. It's already spring break. It just started after. Good.
Right. So it's basically a semester, 3 weeks, semester, 3 weeks, semester, 3 weeks for 3 years.
Yeah.
So you get all the credits in, and one semester each year is an experiential semester. You're supposed to be doing internship work or some sort of work where you're out in the community, and this is necessary in Africa because even if you wanted to recreate the American model, there aren't enough PhDs. You could not recreate a Macalester or a Harvard or a Colby, even if you wanted to, because there aren't enough people to teach it and there aren't enough people to afford it. So this has the advantage of being less expensive. The annual tuition is $3,000 a year. And It also has the advantage of really doing a good job of preparing students to get jobs after they graduate. Most ALU graduates are employed within 6 months of graduation. The average in Africa for a college graduate is over 5 years. And so clearly this model is attractive to employers because they're getting people who've actually worked and have actually made connections and have actually learned these practical things. So, and the other thing that's really worth emphasizing is students don't choose a major, they choose a mission. So rather than saying, I'm going to major in English, I'm going to major in history, ALU has what they call the 14 grand challenges and opportunities for Africa. So things like urbanization, agriculture, conservation, women's empowerment, government. And so you choose a mission, and then you design your education around that particular mission, which has the advantage of being something that really ties in to your passion and to your practical interests, and also being much more interdisciplinary than a typical American major. So it's a very different model, which leads to a different academic structure and a different curriculum.
And why did he call this, and why does the group call it and this is African Leadership University? Why didn't he just call it African University? Okay, he's got a goal here. Okay,
yes.
And just talk about that. Why there's a goal here, and it's obviously to improve Africa and African education and et cetera, et cetera. Just talk about that. That's really an important little factor in this.
It is, and I honestly wish we had something called the American Leadership University.
Well, let's go.
So the founding of ALU goes back to Fred Swaniker's senior thesis at Macalester, where he wrote about the fact that what was holding Africa back at this was the absence of strong and ethical leadership. We see this every day in Africa. His argument was that in order for Africa to take the next step in its evolution, it needed a new generation of effective and ethical leaders. And the only way to produce those leaders was through education. So the university has and this is again a little different from a lot of American universities, which try to be all things to all people. The goal of ALU is very simple. They want to educate the next generation of leaders for the continent, leaders in government, leaders in business, leaders in education, leaders in the social sector. And so there's really a lot of focus in all of the education on what it takes, what it means to be a leader, which doesn't always mean being the loudest person in the room, and often means being willing to sacrifice your own interests for the interests of others. But it's a very particular mission designed for a crucial need on the African continent. And so that's why leadership is in the name of the institution.
To say I'm going to do all this as Fred did in his head in the year 2000 or something is great. How did he ever put this together? I mean, who did he go to?
Well, it was a multi-step process.
I mean, if I have to start Larry University, where do I start? Yeah, Larry's Leadership University. Where do I start?
People like you and me are not like entrepreneurs. I would have no idea either. But, Fred got out of Macalester. He went to, he started the way a lot of, he was a major in economics. He went to work for McKinsey in South Africa. And then McKinsey sent him to Stanford Business School. And he got out and he decided, I don't want to do this. I don't want to work for a big consulting company. I want to make a difference in the world. So he left McKinsey, had to pay him back for the tuition that they provided for him to go to Stanford. Actually, I was going to ask that question. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, he had to pay him back. Yeah. And he, with some collaborators, founded something called the African Leadership Academy, which is thriving to this day. It's located outside Johannesburg, and it is a Pan-African high school designed to bring some of the best talent on the continent together. It's small, and most of those graduates go on to the best colleges and universities in the U.S. and in the UK. So we had ALA graduates at Macalester, for instance. But what he realized was that two things. First of all, it was too small to have the kind of impact he wanted. And second of all, most of the graduates were leaving Africa. They were graduating, they were going to Princeton,
that was
and they weren't going back.
That was actually going to be a question of mine. That's a question of mine, but go ahead. Yeah.
So he decided he needed something that was bigger and that would focus more on people who were going to stay in the continent. And so he is, he's a prodigious fundraiser. And in order to start this ALU is a nonprofit. In order to start this kind of nonprofit, obviously you need a lot of philanthropy. And he got philanthropy from a number of different sources, but the big one was that he got $350 million from the MasterCard Foundation. Which
I'm glad you mentioned
which is one of the wealthiest foundations a little piece of every penny that MasterCard makes goes into their foundation. And the focus of their foundation is Africa.
Wow.
And so this was I believe the largest grant they've ever made. And a big chunk of that went to help fund scholarships and operating expenses at ALU. So right now the operating budget still depends very, very heavily on philanthropy. And so part of the goal over the next few years is to develop a sustainable operating budget that relies on a mix of philanthropy and tuition revenue. So you need some of those middle class. We're not going to ever get at ALU the tiny group of ultra wealthy people in Africa. They're always going to look to the U.S. and to Europe. It's just the way it is. But we can, I think, tap into the middle class market in Africa. People who spend $2,000 or $3,000 a year to send their kids to high school and would certainly be willing to spend that much to send their kids to a first-rate African university. So, we need a mix of those middle-class students and then students who are on scholarship. ALU has students who grew up in refugee camps. They have students who grew up in villages without electricity. And that's part of its mission, to serve those students as well. But as you know, you need to be financially viable. So we need some students who can afford to pay as well. So that's the way it started, and I think it is the powerful nature of the mission that has attracted the philanthropy.
Are they recruiting in the U.S. or is it strictly for the African kids?
It's almost exclusively.
I'm thinking of African American kids, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, Larry, and there has been discussion about whether there could be effective recruiting among African diaspora around the world.
Yeah.
We have not focused on that yet, but there are a variety of partnerships that we have that bring American students to ALU for short periods of time.
Really?
So
cool.
we have, there's a group of students from Yale who are there, a group of students from Princeton who are there. I'm trying to work out so that we can get a group of students from Macalester to come. So right now the focus is really almost exclusively on, it's an African university about Africa for African students. But I think as it grows, there is the potential to have some interest, particularly for doing something like a year at ALU for,
sure, that'd be so cool.
The very large African diaspora.
That'd be so cool. And I think it'd be thrilling for so many, just particularly African American students, obviously. I mean, to go to the home continent, so to speak. Okay,
absolutely.
It'd be wonderful. I mean, it'd just be so cool. Okay, and so useful and so helpful, and as many of them would stay in Africa. Okay, and do the good work there that's needed. Bring their intelligence to that continent, etc. It's just really fascinating, this whole thing. I have to ask this. And I don't know if you're teaching there, but who are the professors? And I'm going to ask this: is the curriculum? I'm going to say it this way: well-rounded. I mean, is there based like you have to take history, you have to take math, you have to take some literature, and then get into your major, so to speak. Okay, but what's the curriculum like, and who are the professors?
Most of the faculty are African, and again, because there are so few PhDs in Africa relative to the need. There are some with PhDs, but a lot of them have master's degrees. A lot of them have been practitioners in their field. There are some faculty from other parts of the world who are just drawn to the mission from Europe, from the United States. And then there's a growing group of what I would describe as visiting faculty who will come in for a term and teach a course. They'll be on sabbatical from their home institutions, and they see this as, super interesting and very, very impactful. So, one of the best professors who we've had in the time I've been there is a professor at the University of Washington who came in and taught 2 courses, and students just absolutely loved the guy. So it's a mix of mostly African faculty and then faculty from around the world. The curriculum I would describe as more narrowly focused than what you'd find, say, at an American liberal arts college. So this is not the place to go if you want to go to graduate school in nuclear physics.
Medieval dance, would that be a good one?
Yeah. So it's more focused, I would say, on areas related to those challenges and opportunities. Heavy focus on conservation, on social science. Heavy focus on things like software engineering and computing, because that's where a lot of the jobs are, and that's where a lot of the students go. Heavy focus on areas related to business, so economics, finance. These are students who need to get jobs. Job isn't a luxury, and so there is a real So there's more of a focus on, I would describe as practically and professionally oriented fields that would be relevant to an African student population. So it's not a research university, with the exception of some research that's done in conservation. It's exclusively a teaching university. So faculty are not expected to do research.
Yeah, exactly.
In that way, it's more like what you'd find, say, at an American community college, where they're teachers. So not as broadly focused, but necessary for that particular context. And
I got to ask this, and you brought it up a minute ago, Macalester. By the way, I have to tell you something funny. Whenever I see the word "whereas," just bring this up, I always read it as "warious." And it takes me a second to realize, wait a minute, it's whereas. And I have to go back and read the paragraph again. And every time I say Macalester, I say Macalester. And I have to go back and read it again.
You're not the only one.
So I apologize for that right off the bat. Okay. Macalester, friends are graduate of Macalester. Is this hard to convince them to send a group over there? It can't be.
I don't think so, actually. No, Macalester has always had a very global focus. It has a lot of international students. In my experience, Macalester students loved traveling. They didn't want to. Macalester students didn't want to go to Western Europe. They wanted to go to Africa, to Asia, to South America, and so I don't think there's just been so much to do at ALU, but I think the potential to send Macalester students there would be very, very high.
I think so too, and I think when they find Mauritius the way you described it, I think you're going to have a hard time getting them back. Okay.
Yeah, no. Wow. If they go to Mauritius, they're not going to want to leave.
There's your line. Mauritius is delicious. Okay, I got to tell you.
Someone probably used that at some point.
I hope so. Okay, but wow, what a this is so interesting. And so what I'm just going to end it this way. They're doing that. Most of their money's coming in. Do they need any more help or anything like that? What can I do from this end, or listeners, or whatever? How do you?
Well,
help?
I mean,
if necessary.
Yes. So one of my responsibilities right now is to help with U.S. fundraising. So we're going to try to ramp up efforts in this country to get more support for ALU. But mostly it's about getting the word out about this really interesting educational model. We've got a lot of interest from the Carnegie Foundation out in California. We sent 25 students out to the campus of Stanford the last 2 summers. And I will tell you, the American students were blown away by these African students and what they could do. Just visibility, I think, at this point is really important for ALU, because ultimately visibility and awareness of the mission will translate into resources and to visiting faculty and to all of those things. So if you know of anyone who's really interested who's in education and interested in doing something impactful and different and adventurous, just have them contact me.
I will. This is fabulous. I'm so glad we did this. Thank you, Brian, as always.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
That's great stuff. Okay? You're fun to have at the party. I appreciate you being here. Okay?
Oh, I appreciate you having me.
No, thank you. Okay, we'll talk again soon, I promise. Okay?
All right, take care.
Thanks, Billy. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. That's everybody. That's Dr. Brian Rosenberg. Okay, an amazing guy. Okay, visiting professor, Harvard Graduate School of Education, former president, Macalester College, not Macalester, author and obviously senior consultant to the African Leadership University, which is really something, I got to tell you. All right, really cool. All right, and you learned about Mauritius, too. We're going to archive the show over at ace-ed.org, and I hope you pass our show around. My name is Larry Jacobs. Wow, thank you for listening, and have a great day.